Welcome to Tech Smarter. This is the place where we talk with innovators, operators, and investors on everything that's happening within senior living. It's an exciting place to be. And if this is your first time joining us, I'm thrilled that you're here. We appreciate all your feedback that you've been giving us. And I want to go ahead and first of all, thank our sponsors because this episode is sponsored by Leading Age Arizona. And Tech Smarter is a production of the Smarter service. So if you're a senior living operator and you're struggling to provide consistent tech support for your residents and staff, the Smarter service is the premier tech concierge provider. And we are there for you, helping your residents with every printer problem. We are also empowering older adults with personalized one-on-one support, from troubleshooting those pesky printers to help setting up video calls with family. And if you're ready to learn more, you can go ahead and DM me and I will be sure to get back to you. I want to go ahead and introduce our guest today. Today, we are talking with Michael Skaff, and Michael Skaff is the CIO, the Chief Information Officer at Sequoia Living. And he doesn't just talk tech, he's living the real world strategy of integrating technology across a massive senior living organization. So we're going to dive deep today with Michael. And Michael, welcome to Tech Smarter.
Thank you so much for having me, Abby. It's a pleasure to be here with you today.
Yeah, for my pleasure. For anyone who isn't familiar with you, would you please go ahead and introduce yourself?
Sure. Michael Skaff. I serve as the Chief Information Officer, as you said, of Sequoia Living. Sequoia Living is a multi-service operator in California. We operate life plans, some affordable housing, the oldest senior center in the U.S. down in beautiful Aquatic Park, as well as another senior center, and a lot of community-based services as well. So we have a number of different service lines that serve older adults, and we are actively looking at some new service lines too. So it's a great time to be in senior living, I think, and Sequoia Living is really an incredible leader in this space, and it's a privilege to work with them. So happy to be here with you.
Thank you. Thank you so much. So, Michael, from your perspective, what's the single biggest misconception innovators have about developing technology for older adults, and how does that prevent them from building effective solutions?
It's a great question, Abby. It's a challenge because there's so many good ideas out there and so many good solutions that unfortunately often don't really achieve their maximum efficacy because the folks designing them don't really validate that they will work within the context that they're hoping they will. So even if there's some great technology idea or service idea that seems to be functional or operational or viable from, I will call it the outside, it's really important to test that within the industry and make sure that it doesn't just function externally, it doesn't just function independently. It has to function within the context of senior living. It has to function and support the staff in the way they do their work. People talk about disruption in technology. I don't like that word in healthcare, both in acute care as well as in post-acute and long-term care on our side of the healthcare continuum, because it implies that we can come in and break things and expect that to make things better. And that doesn't always end up being the case. So I think it's really important for innovators to validate their idea will actually work within the context of how senior living operators actually work, the way the staff work, the way the residents engage with their communities and want to live their lives. So it's really important to understand that context first before really trying to launch things. And so I've spent time with a lot of these companies, these startups, really looking at their go-to-market, really looking at product market fit and saying, does this actually fit in the way you think it will? Even if it's, again, if it seems amazing and life-changing and really innovative, does it still fit in enough that it will grow and help sustain the operator in new and exciting ways? So it's that fit that matters.
It really is. And I've worked with a lot of the innovators as well. And I've found that they may love their solution, but not understand and love the person that they're supporting.
Yes.
And I mean, we've seen this time and time again, helping an older adult with their technology and seeing how firsthand
Yeah,
ignoring their needs at the start can derail or disrupt a great innovation. So we've just seen this over and over again. And, you know, many organizations focus on resident facing tech, like an engagement portal, for instance,
hmm,
but they neglect the back end impact.
yeah,
And a lot of times that often impacts staff burnout, right? And
absolutely.
turnover.
Look at EHRs. Everybody thought that EHRs were such a great opportunity for patients, and they forgot about the doctors and nurses that have to work in them all the time.
Amazing. It's just, it's such an oversight. What technologies are you seeing successfully move the needle on staff empowerment and retention? And how do you quantify that return on investment?
Well, it's interesting you brought up the engagement platforms because they did start out focused on really purely the resident side. And I've seen now the best ones out there really think as much, in some cases, if not more, about the staff interactions with the residents and the staff operational workflows, because those have to mesh here. Those have to blend with how the residents are living their lives and how the operations are running effectively. So the best engagement platforms out there really are not just resident facing platforms, but staff facing platforms as well. And they really help support the staff operations, whether it's in logistics or transportation or food and dining or activities or life enrichment. And they really become a core platform for those staff. And if they're built well, and by that I mean not from a technical standpoint, it's really from a process standpoint. If they're built in a way that supports the way the staff work, they can be very effective tools in not making things more complex or making the job of the staff harder, but really making it easier and lightening the administrative burden for the staff. I'm really excited to see the progress that a lot of these platforms have made over the last 5 to 10 years that I've been looking at them, because they're now very thoughtful about, hey, it's not just about the resident, it's also about the staff and what they're doing every day too, because that makes a significant difference. And to answer your second question, we look at churn numbers, we look at turnover, and we also measure staff satisfaction as much as we measure resident satisfaction. Because if the staff aren't happy, they are not going to deliver the best possible care and services to the residents.
Yeah, it's critical because a burnout staff member has no time or patience to help a resident with their
Yeah,
devices. I mean, that's one of the things that the Smarter service does. We fill that gap, but the technology should fundamentally support the caregiver and the staff as well. So, so important. You know, in my experience, and I saw how during the pandemic, the absolute importance of a resident engagement platform
yes.
became, and that the
Mhm.
communities that didn't have that in place, they were just duplicating efforts all over the place. And
Right.
so it's really unique to see how certain communities rose to the occasion and other communities stayed in the dark ages. And you were mentioning that there's just such a late adoption of technology in senior living. Is there any way that operators can uh, adopt sooner, become more informed about what's out there, and that technology can be more useful in a more supportive way?
I think we're entering an inflection point in the industry. And I've given a couple of talks at different conferences about this. I gave a keynote speech about a year ago on this topic. I believe we're heading into an exciting era where a couple of things are happening simultaneously. One, the technology is finally maturing to a point in a lot of different areas that it is showing real efficacy. And that's both in sort of the resident engagement platforms, some of the sensors and resident safety elements, really across the board, that is important for, so that you actually can show some value. Once you adopt this technology, it's actually a good investment, a good financial investment, and a good operational investment for the staff and the operators. So as technology has matured, senior living operators are finally more prepared to adopt these technologies too. They're becoming aware of the fact that these are valuable. These are not just a gadget. These are not just something that is a nice to have. A lot of these elements are now differentiators, especially with this demographic, this generation of residents that are moving in to all of our communities, there's more of an expectation that technology will be part of the services that are delivered to them, more part of the hospitality. Things will be more personalized. So there's more elements here that are necessary and that both the senior living operators and our customers, the residents and their families, are expecting. So that, and finally, there's some elements in reimbursement that are finally moving into position to pay for things more on the healthcare side of the spectrum continuum. But these three elements together are really precipitating an exciting change and actually a rapid increase in adoption in technology in senior living. And yes, senior living has traditionally lagged behind in technology adoption. If acute care is about 5 to 10 years behind sort of enterprise companies, enterprise technology, senior living has tended to be another 4 to 5 years behind that. We're starting to catch up, which is really exciting. The people are aware of these opportunities and they're really excited to move forward with them. We're putting some of the fundamentals in place. Simply things like Wi-Fi in resident-facing areas was never in place before because operators couldn't justify the investment. There wasn't enough use of these technologies. Now there finally is. So all of these elements move together to really support this confluence of progress in ways that will really drive adoption and really help do a lot of things. We still have challenges, I will say, with the digital divide, but as we're looking outside the industry, and you and I talked about this a little bit before this segment, I and others are taking the opportunity in senior living not just to keep having the same conversations, but to start seeing what other parts of the world are doing in healthcare, in operations, in enterprise technology, and really leveraging some of those best practices and some of the exciting innovations that are now possible. So I will be attending the health conference next week, looking at digital health opportunities, because it's good to have conversations within our industry and see what other folks are doing. I also think it's really important that we challenge ourselves to break through that inertia and the same conversations that we sometimes have and see what else is happening out there and really learn from that. Plus, finally, the AI era that we have to mention and that we're all in right now is an accelerant for progress. Everything from the user experience to what is possible behind technology, we're going to see a lot of progress based on that too.
Wow, you touched on so many things. And so I want to first address the infrastructure of the Wi-Fi, for instance, and providing this kind of technical support. So in the past, having something like Wi-Fi would have been a need to have. Now it is an expectation. And I liken this to the same way that communities used to think that it was appropriate to maybe have a once a month tech education class on using your devices and perhaps being more secure online. And now it's far more about it being built into the infrastructure of the community rather than it just being an amenity. So you talked about that. Can you elaborate on that a little more, please?
Absolutely. With the adoption of technology comes a few things. The need for ongoing education. We all know technology is changing so fast. So really providing resources to help educate the residents about what is possible and what the tools are and opportunities are that they can take advantage of. Also with that, as we know, comes cybersecurity risks and fraud risks, especially with AI. Both staff and residents are at greater threat now than they've ever been before, with some of these tools, frankly, that are being used by bad actors to perpetrate fraud. So it's a bit of an arms race there, and the more we can do to educate both our staff and our residents about what's possible, better ways to secure themselves or protect themselves from a cybersecurity and fraud standpoint, and also just more of what's out there and possible. There are wonderful lifelong learning opportunities online and sort of in a hybrid mode, for example, that are now possible. So really helping deliver these services in a way that is tech friendly and tech enabled is now, again, as you said, kind of not a nice to have, but a need to have, because it's part of the expectation. And it's more and more a part of the services too. We're really investing in education and training. We have a much more tech-enabled life enrichment team, for example. We have an incredibly tech-savvy life enrichment team. They're as tech-savvy as our IT team in certain cases, and they're an active partner with our IT team in selecting some of the solutions now, and they're an important partner there. So it's really moving to the forefront of our operations because of what's possible and because of what the residents are asking for. I did a tour of a couple of our communities recently, just talking about cybersecurity, for example, because there was so much interest in this. People were actively asking, what should I be doing to protect myself, and really asking to be educated in these areas.
Yeah, and so I am curious with there's so much of an influx of the need of protection and security. And so if we circle back just for a minute and talk about some of the requirements of HIPAA compliance, you mentioned that data governance, overall cyber resilience. These are the things that your team needs to know about before deploying it. And how do you assure residents of their security?
It's a great question. And it's a constant challenge, and it's a constantly changing challenge. So it's not something you can just sort of set a strategy for and stick with it indefinitely. It's something we have to continually evolve because the threats, the challenges, the compliance even is changing too. So HIPAA is starting to change. We're seeing some evolution and progression. Compliance usually is a lagging element in our industry and in most industries because it is always playing catch up with what is possible. So as compliance requirements change, we have to make some adjustments there. Part of that, though, is just good best practice at a baseline for making sure that both we are doing what we should be doing, as well as our vendors and partners should be doing what they should be doing. Which is to say, we look at things like SOC 2 compliance in some of our platforms, our technology platforms, to make sure that they're doing all the operational, technical, and security elements that they should really be following to make sure that these platforms are safe, secure, and available. So there are some important questions that we ask as sort of a baseline when we're evaluating any new technology solution. Anything that interacts with resident data, resident PHI, protected health information, has to be, there are layers of consideration around HIPAA and some of the other privacy statutes, especially in California. So there's some baseline questions that we always ask of any new partner or provider. And some good sort of basic foundational elements that we're asking ourselves to and constantly evaluating ourselves. We do ongoing penetration testing, for example, to make sure our network is secure. We're adopting new technologies, many of which now leverage AI in many interesting ways to really, again, keep our residents and our staff and our enterprise core data secure. So it's an interesting area because it's constantly changing and we have to constantly evolve with it.
Yeah, I'm curious about leveraging predictive analysis or analytics in AI to help care for your residents' wellness. What does that mean for customizing your resident experience across your communities?
I will say we're very much in the early days of the efficacy of predictive analytics showing up as valuable. You see, much like I mentioned earlier, with acute care sort of leading the way, in part because they have more data because they've been doing some of this longer from a technical standpoint. So Epic just announced recently that they're going to take billions of data points and start building predictive care plans based on the best practices that they can look at from a pattern matching standpoint across billions of data points that they've gathered anonymously to say, okay, based on these patterns, we think that this patient should be treated this way because other patients like this person were treated this way and it turned out well. We are starting to see similar elements in post-acute and long-term care and senior living, but I think we're still in the very early days. There are elements in some of the safety technologies, so whether it's fall detection and eventually prevention, that are really exciting and really starting to show true efficacy that I'm very excited and interested in. To other areas like resident engagement that look at establishing a baseline pattern of what someone's interested in and suggesting ways either to the staff or to the resident to keep them engaged. It's like, sort of like the Netflix engine. You liked these things, you might also like this. So it's from very simple examples like that to the much more exciting and sort of more deep data requirements around healthcare and clinical outcomes. There are some really exciting opportunities in predictive analytics that are showing up. Again, right now it's in sort of parts and pieces in different areas, but over the next couple of years, we're going to see a lot more of that. A lot more companies are integrating with EHRs to drive these opportunities. The EHRs themselves in senior living are also doing a lot of work in this area. So we're going to see some very exciting outcomes, demonstrable outcomes in the next I think 2 to 3 years, if not this year as well, that really help drive the needle in terms of patient, client, resident outcomes, and really help improve the quality of the care that we can provide. And also importantly, continue to lighten the load administratively for the staff.
Yeah, you have mentioned healthcare several times, and so I wanted to discuss that for a minute. What strategic steps is Sequoia Living taking to fully integrate telehealth and remote monitoring into the care model?
We're looking at different pieces of this. We have a number of skilled nursing facilities as part of our portfolio. So we're looking at a number of different areas of monitoring technologies to improve and ensure resident safety. There are a number of different areas that we're excited about. We're first focused, this is where I advise a lot of the startups to focus, really focused on our communities to start, because those are controlled environments. We know what's going on very specifically before we move out into our participants, is what we call them, the people that participate in our community-based services, because we want to prove some of this out internally and make sure that all of the operational elements, the data and the efficacy are proven out effectively. But there are some really exciting things coming together to show interesting outcomes here. So yes, we're looking at monitoring tools. We're looking at some safety tools for our residents in ways that, again, were hypothetical a few years ago and are now proven, which, again, that helps drive adoption when operators don't have to say, okay, I'm going to spend a whole bunch of money and hypothetically may get a return. We can actually see specifically the improvements in safety and outcomes. So you'll see more movement both from us and from, I think, the rest of the industry too.
Yeah, 100%. I want to move into a couple final questions here. I want to know from you and your experience, what has been one of the biggest surprises in technology adoption? And also, what's been some of the biggest headaches that you've experienced?
From a technology adoption standpoint, I think I've been surprised at the rate of increase in resident adoption of technology. Just a few years ago, it was more of a push rather than a pull. Now I have residents in communities that are, have retired from, let's say, IBM or from other major tech companies, and they are very, very, very tech savvy professionals that have very deep knowledge technically of what is possible, what they expect. And they're absolutely willing to get in there side by side with us, for example, and look at our requirements for our resident engagement platform, which is a wonderful opportunity for us, because then we can really ensure that these are driven by the people who will be using them. So it's not just hypothetically we're gathering, what we think might be good for them, but they're doing this with us now, which is a wonderful partnership. It also provides opportunities for engagement for them. They love doing this work, and we love doing it with them. So it's really exciting to get to do this. And I think it's the rate of adoption and the rapidity, how fast it's changed has really surprised me, because we went from one paradigm, I think, very quickly to a new paradigm here.
Yeah, it's funny that you mentioned that, because I remember back in the early days of working with older adults that some of my students would show up to classes with the new iPhone that didn't have a home button on it. And I thought to myself, okay, I need to up my knowledge in order to serve them. Some of them showed up with an Apple Watch long before I had one. And so they were ready to adopt new technology before I was. And I just see that happening more and more. And now some of the headaches. What have been some of the biggest headaches in technology infrastructure, or just overall, that you never expected and never want to have again?
Well, it's not that I've never expected some of these. I will say most of our industry is playing catch up. So with technology adoption accelerating sort of past where I think a lot of us are ready for, we're really trying to retool in a lot of places and make sure that we have Wi-Fi everywhere, make sure that we have the basic fundamental infrastructure everywhere that will help support some of this. So really just making sure that we have the right pieces in place. Also, we haven't talked about data and the use of data. Use of data has been something that enterprise technology has used for decades. That's sort of the world I came from originally 30 years ago. And senior living is really waking up. We talked about predictive analytics. You have to have good, clean, well-structured data to do these things and to really see the outcomes that we're hoping for. we have to really retool our data infrastructure, if you will, and how we've integrated a lot of these systems to really maximize those outcomes and maximize the value of these investments. So we're having to quickly sort of restructure ourselves and come up to speed on many of these things. The nice thing is there's a lot of precedent out there. There are good examples of where this has been successful outside of senior living as well as in senior living, but there's some good places to look to see success and what success looks like and what we should where we should work on to improve our fundamental infrastructure to get to where we need to be. So I think there are some incredible opportunities. I think, again, we're going through a period of rapid change on the operator side. And I've had a number of conversations with other people in my chair, and heads of IT, CIOs, VPs of IT, around all of these challenges and what we're doing to sort of retool. Also, again, trying to keep up with the cybersecurity challenges, the interest in AI. So there's a lot of excitement and interest and some hyperbole around AI. Trying to keep up with what is actually practically useful and where the risks are. And those are still very much emerging, week by week as these models change. So looking at how we both prepare ourselves from a data standpoint and a utilization standpoint, as well as really make sure that we are change agents. We are catalysts for progress, and we're not standing in the way of progress. So working hard to make sure that we can actually support all of the excitement around AI and really leverage some of these new tools and opportunities as quickly and effectively as possible. So we have a lot of work to do, and I don't think our industry in general, and this is a generalization, but we're not used to moving this fast, and things are changing faster than we're ready or used to dealing with.
Yeah, absolutely. At the Smarter Service, we have also been tracking data every time we work with residents in a community, and we've noticed the transition from helping someone with just something that's broken and and then fixing it. And then because of the data, we can see that once that basic need is taken care of, then the resident starts applying technology towards what it can do for them and how it can help them in their hobbies and in their interests. And that's the data that we could use and put into place so that we can start teaching classes, not just about what to do when it's broken, but how to use it for your sake and for your enjoyment and your livelihood. Michael, go ahead.
Just
please.
one last final thought here too that you touched on is, and I know we're almost out of time, is there's such a spectrum now. We have some very tech savvy residents, and we also have some residents that still are not comfortable with technology. So that's one of the other challenges, is effectively serving the whole continuum of technical knowledge there.
100%. And we meet them where they're at.
Yes.
So, Michael, that was pure gold. Thank you so much today. Thank you for sharing the blueprint on scaling tech in your community. It was truly a masterclass in working smarter. For our listeners, if you're nodding your head right now because your community needs to move from tech mess to tech success, we want you to reach out to us so that we can make this transition easier for you. And for those of you that are participating in the chat, we thank you so much, and we will see you right back here next week. Michael, how can people get in touch with you?
Email, LinkedIn. I'm out there on the internet, so I'd love to hear from you if you have some interesting thoughts. And let's engage in this. This is a conversation, so that's how we move the whole industry forward. And Abby, thank you for hosting this. I appreciate it.
My pleasure. And thank you for being here with us today. And we'll see you right back here next week on Tech Smarter.